Hello everyone and welcome. So this video is taking a look at damage scaling, which for those who might be wondering is how much more or less damage a weapon does against one enemy compared to another, or more precisely by what percentage the on-screen numbers change by. However, the main purpose here isn't to determine by what amount a single weapon's damage changes by, but rather how that change compares to another weapon or weapon type. I'll touch on an example in a moment. So I've taken a number of different weapons and tested them against different enemies. The weapons are coming onto screen now, and quickly a couple of things to note about what damage was recorded. Cartesian was for one projectile, Merciless was the sum of all projectiles as not all of them were the same, Telesto was the impact and detonation from one projectile, Witherhoard was a single tick, Anarchy was a single tick, the Lament and Fallen Guillotine was for one single swipe, and Galahorn was impact and blast for the main rocket, and then impact and detonation for 8 Wolfpack rounds. The perks don't matter as it was the exact same weapon that I used against every test subject, and there was no spec mods. Everything was tested at 1330 power, all armor was at 1330 power, and my overall power level was 1350. Damage numbers were collected against Karl, of course, who is a major, Alkestis, who is a Lost Sector boss on Europa and actually a boss, Kalli, where all precision damage was divided by 2, Templar, Atheon, and finally a Gambit Primeval without any Slayer buffs. The shape of the symbol next to an enemy's head shows what enemy type it is, in this case a triangle for a major or a diamond for a boss. I can't show the numbers on screen for every weapon against every target, as that would take far too long, so while you will need to take my word for most of these numbers, I am showing some weapons in the background as I'm talking. Starting with Karl and how damage scales to a couple of bosses. Against Alkestis and Kalli, the changes are far from consistent between different weapon types. Anarchy and Galahorn victims have huge drops in damage, as it's well known by now that they do less against bosses specifically, but against Alkestis, rocket launchers, swords and fusion rifles gained 9.7% in their numbers, linear fusion rifles gained 3.5% and snipers a mere 1.3%. Straight away, this means that any DPS numbers provided based off of testing against Karl can't be reliably compared if you want to know what might be best against a raid boss, for example. When I tested Ascendancy with 2 in the opening chamber and Whisper of the Worm, links to both of those videos in the description down below, DPS was 55,288 and 55,013 respectively, meaning Whisper appears to be the better choice. However, if we apply the change in percentage against Alkestis and adjust the damage only, DPS for Ascendancy increases to 55,183, while Whisper is just 55,723. This means Ascendancy has gone from something that did 5,000 damage per second less to near as damn it the same as Whisper. DPS has increased by 9.7% for Ascendancy while only 1.3% for Whisper, as per the percentage changes in damage already mentioned. As far as I'm concerned, this is a big deal and why Karl needs to go, and I will no longer be testing against him. So, something I consider a bit of a holy grail with damage and scaling. Are these changes that we've just covered from Karl to Alkestis consistent across all bosses, i.e. boss to boss? A large table is coming onto screen now that I'm going to break down. Some values are missing against Atheon and Templar that I either didn't have time to do or just couldn't, such as swords against Templar, but they're not really needed at this point. What you're looking at is damage for all the weapons tested. The values for each weapon are as declared at the start of the video. The first column of values is for Karl, the next column is Alkestis and the percentage change from Karl, which we've already covered. After that, however, the remaining columns are different bosses in the game with damage and the percentage change from Alkestis. And it's all the same. It might only be a small sample size of weapons and test subjects, but the important thing is that damage is scaling equally across all of them. There is no difference between each weapon type. Yes, the numbers against the Primeval are very low, even compared to Atheon. But if Weapon A averages 10% more damage per second than Weapon B against the Primeval, regardless of the numbers being different, it will also average 10% more damage per second against Templar, Atheon, Kalli, and quite possibly every boss in the game. This means we won't have situations like Ascendancy and Whisper as discussed earlier. Eyes of Tomorrow, Galahorn, Anarchy can all be reliably tested against the boss without the numbers being skewed. This also shows that no, Templar doesn't receive bonus damage from fusion rifles compared to Atheon. That's just the effect of particle deconstruction and being close enough to the target. And taking Alkestis out of the equation and comparing directly between other bosses, it's the same. Kalli to Atheon, equal scaling. A Primeval to Templar, equal scaling. Even Templar to Atheon, equal scaling. I could pick any one of these as a new target to consistently test DPS against, and the results will be relevant against any other target and possibly almost every boss in the game. The numbers will be different, but they scale equally for every weapon. So the last question, who's going to replace Karl? Of course the main requirement is that it's a boss. All of these are apart from Karl. The next requirement, and this is almost as much as a priority as the first, is that I can quickly and efficiently test damage while solo as well. This immediately rules out Atheum. And while reaching the damage phase for Templar is easy as a solo player, it's not practical to reach the checkpoint every week, solo or not. I also can't test swords efficiently there. As for Alkestis, well, this boss dies far too quickly, which leaves Kalli and a Primeval. The Primeval has very low numbers, similar to PvP, suggesting they're as base as the numbers can get, but that doesn't really matter if they all scale the same, which we've determined they do between these two bosses. Couple that to the fact that it takes a bit of time to bank 50 motes solo in a private match, and it's very easy to die when testing, and this loses out on the practicality front. Meaning, from here going forward, all damage and DPS tests will be against Kalli. The double crit bonus isn't a problem, as the on-screen number can just be divided by 2. And you can see from the table previously that it hasn't caused any problems with those numbers. The whole test cycle is quick and efficient, no lengthy mechanics or work before damage can be done, effectively infinite ammo due to the rally flag, and a quick wipe allows me to immediately change some weapons and start testing again. While there will no doubt be other bosses in the game that I could use, I feel Kalli is the best option to my knowledge. Hopefully Last Wish will stay with us for another year at least. And that is all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting. Up until Witch Queen now, I'm not sure how many large DPS tests I'll be doing, so expect more short videos testing perks and individual weapons, while we tick over and see out the final month or so of Season 15. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time.